Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the May 27th, 2014 Burnsville Planning Commission. Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening, Chair.
Staff.
Good evening.
Mr. Brixis. Welcome, everybody, in our viewing, listening audience. I will bring the meeting to order at this time. The first item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Any changes from Commissioners?
None.
Staff?
None from staff.
All right. I would entertain a motion to adopt.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Bradrick, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Thomas. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, that passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from May 12th, 2014. Any changes from Commissioners? Staff, any changes?
Nope.
All right. I would look for a motion.
So move.
So moved by Mr. Tahiri. Second?
Second, Chair.
Second by Mr. Singh. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, passes 5-0. Sorry about that. The third item on the agenda is a public hearing application for Capstone Homes for a development stage PUD and preliminary and final plot for 49 single-family lots to be known as Rose Bluff, located west and north of St. James Church, 3650 Williams Drive. Mr. Slania?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, and for the public. The applicant has requested additional time on this. We did not get that information until after the public notice was sent to the neighbors and to the newspaper, so we are obligated by law to open the public hearing, and they are requesting continuance to June 9th. Last week, we were able to get a letter sent to the property owners who were originally notified stating that the new date, or the date of the continued hearing will be June 9th.
All right.
We were able to get that out.
All right. With that, then, I will open the public hearing at this time. If anybody is here that wishes to speak to this matter, feel free to step forward. Seeing no one, then motion to continue or just?
Motion to continue.
All right. Then I would look for a motion to continue.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Bradrick. Second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Thomas. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. That will be continued then until June 9th hearing.
Correct.
All right. That passes 5-0. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing application for 1301 Riverwoods Drive LLC for a planned unit development amendment to allow a pawn shop at 1301 Riverwood Drive. Mr. Slania?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Same with the last application. Late last week, we heard from the applicant wishing to continue the public hearing. Notices were sent, so the Planning Commission is obligated to open the public hearing, take any comments that we may have tonight, and we will resume discussion on June 9th.
All right. With that, then, I will open the public hearing. Anyone wishes to speak to that, to this application, please feel free to step forward at this time. Seeing no one, I would entertain a motion to continue at this time.
Mr. Chair, I so move that we continue this item until
All right.
June 9th.
Moved to motion to continue by Mr. Singh, second.
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Bradrick. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes 5-0, and this will be heard on June 9th at the regular Planning Commission meeting at that time.
Correct.
All right. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing application for City of Burnsville for an ordinance amending Title 10, Chapters 4, 19, 22, 23, 24, and 25 of the Burnsville City Code regarding permitted and conditional uses. Mr. Brixis.
Could you show me how to start this?
Yes.
I don't want to screw anything up.
Yes. You can either use. Okay, there used to be a house down
Yeah.
there. This is.
There it is. Where's the advance?
I guess right there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
Commissioners, the last time we met, we discussed this in concept. Basically, we wanted to re-examine the uses within our industrial zoning districts. The major objectives we were looking at is making sure that the proposed land uses that are allowed in each of the various commercial or industrial zoning districts are consistent with the purpose statements of each district, that the uses are compatible, that the uses will allow our industrial land uses to operate in an unencumbered fashion, and in that respect, that we want to make sure that all the rollover districts from the B districts that come into our industrial districts are compatible and will not interfere with the operations. The second element that we wanted to do as part of the EDC is we wanted to look at what we could add within the industrial districts that would provide a greater variety of tenant choices for our existing industrial buildings. Our Burnsville zoning districts are established in areas that are isolated, and they're done intentionally to allow them to operate in an unencumbered fashion. Generally, these land uses are characterized by heavy traffic, high volumes of truck traffic, noise from machinery, noise from loading and equipment, odors from manufacturing or production process. We have a number of industrial districts. The I-1 is located in the northeastern portion of the community. I'll go to the map. This is intended to be for warehousing, manufacturing, and production. The I-3 is guided toward larger office complex, a higher end industrial area. And then our I-2, GIM, and the GIH industrial districts are heavy industrial districts. These would include everything from mining to large-scale production. You can see on the zoning map here that the various areas that have been guided for these land uses. These areas provide a degree of isolation from our residential neighborhoods and our commercial districts, with the expressed intention to allow them to operate in a manner that would not interfere or be negatively impact those lesser intense uses. Our zoning district right now is designed to allow our B or business zoning conditional uses to roll into our I or industrial districts. This brings commercial, retail, and some service industries or businesses into these districts that are not necessarily compatible with the production or manufacturing warehousing intent of the districts. Some of the conditional uses include liquor stores, restaurants, taverns, nightclubs, funeral homes, gas stations, nursing homes, hospitals, and museums, which really don't blend well with a high production type industrial characteristics. These uses can bring within those industrial districts regular customer traffic, higher parking ratios than what's designed within our industrial districts, non-industrial personnel intermixing with our heavy industrial uses. The presence of commercial uses could interfere and actually encumber the continued operation of industrial districts. In this respect, we are making a number of changes. In looking at the I-1 conditional use reviews, we want those uses that will be compatible and feature or complementary to those industrial districts. Further, these I-1 districts will generally roll into the heavier industrial districts. The I-1 changes that we're looking at making, there are two draft ordinances that we included as part of your packet. The first one is the actual changes to the industrial districts. The second one addresses business licensing for commercial kennels. But within attachment A, the ordinance would include allowing art studios, interior decorating studios, photographic studios, music studios, and limited retail sales, electrical services or contractors' yards entirely within the buildings, and contractors' other elements that we feel are complementary within this district and can compatibly coexist. They will have limited customer traffic. They will find affordable rents. We find no real need, if they're entirely within the building, to make them conditional uses. That's why they're rolling into a permitted use status. Other permitted uses that we're looking at is we're adding data or call centers. We think this use has the same characteristics as general office, and which is already allowed as a permitted use within the district, and we are adding it as a listed use just to provide clarity. We believe that these are also complementary to the industrial intent of the district. Within our industrial accessory uses, we moved away from daycare as a principal use, but we did believe that if a company wanted to offer daycare as an accessory use within their own building, that would be permitted. Also, for restaurant and cafeterias that are built right within the same building, that would be also a complementary use for that activity. In that respect, we're pulling out the freestanding daycare, and we will still allow for a restaurant as a conditional use within the district as a freestanding, but in these cases, these accessory uses were deemed to be appropriate. A number of uses that we're taking out of the district. Currently, we allow by conditional use rollover from the business districts a number of assembly uses. These assembly uses have high parking demand, bring people into the industrial district that may not be familiar with that environment. Also, we have the RUPLA laws as far as religious and institutional uses that may allow for churches or schools to start coming into our industrial district. Recognizing this, we are removing the assembly uses from the industrial districts that are currently allowed by conditional use. Those included the armories, religious institutions, fraternal organizations, bowling alley or commercial recreation, funeral homes, and nurseries, museums and galleries. We do not necessarily believe that they fit the intent of our district or would be compatible with our production uses. We have a number of commercial uses that roll over from the B districts. Those include liquor stores, restaurants, taverns, nightclubs, theaters, thrift stores, gas stations. Again, these are bringing customers that are not necessarily industrial into our industrial areas. We're recommending that these be repealed. Upon discussion with the EDC, they had indications that they would like to leave some areas open for restaurant locations, and as such, while these commercial uses are most of these commercial uses are being repealed, we have left restaurant as a freestanding use by conditional use permit. That's what this one exception would be. Conditional uses. We are also looking for new ideas for potential tenants coming into our industrial areas. Most recently, you allowed sports training facilities within the I-1 district by conditional use permit. That's a new tenant that fits within the larger warehouse spaces and will fit within the characteristics of the I-1 district. Other uses that we're looking at are industrial food production or what we'll call industrial farming. These would be hydroponics, aquaponics, and when we looked at this, we wanted to limit it to plants and fish. We at one time considered insect production as a food source, but we didn't want to get into animal breeding or insects, so we've limited it to fish and aquaponics. And that's part of both the description of industrial food production in the definition as well as in the conditional use permit. A couple of things I want to stress here. While we're responsible for zoning, these uses are also regulated by the state, both by Department of Natural Resources for aquaponics, Minnesota Department of Health for food safety, Department of Agriculture for food processing and pesticide use. In that respect, we are asking those agencies to take a look at each one of these conditional uses and give us certification that they meet the minimum requirements. We do not want to have that burden fall to city staff. That's going to fall to those agencies. But we do believe that this is a new use that will fit within both our I districts and all our I districts. One of the things that Chris and I talked about was for aquaponics, would we allow the processing of the fish on site? And that's one of the items we want for your discussion. Currently, within the I-2 district, under processing, we allow meat packing as a I-2 use. In looking at this, we are talking about our industrial districts. There is going to be an odor issue, and there's going to be processing and licensing requirements. In my opinion, not only the growing of fish within the pond, but the processing for a ready store merchandise fits within that manufacturing intent. But we leave it for the Planning Commission to have that discussion and guidance. We believe that the way we've stipulated is that waste would have to be within a sealed container and to control odors, and we believe that with that protection, we will address some of the nuisance issues. Excuse me. Other issues we looked at, we have stone cutting and monument sales as a conditional use in our industrial districts. This is a rollover from the B3. But we do allow stone cutting as a permitted use, and we also allow outdoor sales by conditional use. As such, we didn't believe it needed to be reiterated specifically. So we're asking that this conditional use not be listed because it no longer is relevant. If they want to have outdoor display of headstones or sculptures, they can pursue the outdoor sales lot. If they're going to do it internally, it's already allowed as a permitted use. Gymnasiums, we've identified, they get described in your zoning district under commercial recreational uses. But we don't have any definition of gymnasium, but we do have a definition of both health club and sports training facility. Rather than create confusion, we're going to treat all future gymnasiums either as a health club or a sports training facility, and we didn't believe that it had to be listed, and that is a cleanup item also. Commercial kennels is another thing that we are going to allow as a conditional use permit within our industrial districts. They're permitted use in the B4. They're allowed as conditional use in the B3, the GIH, the I1, and I2 districts. However, we do not have any specific standards for these. Some of the issues that I've faced in other communities are sanitation, and if they're located within a multi-tenant building, air exchange, sanitation, wicking of urine up sheetrock walls, and as such, rather than make that a zoning issue, we do require commercial licensing of commercial kennels, and we've added conditions in attachment B to address dog kennels within our industrial areas. This will require sealing the floors, providing a sealed wall up to 48 inches, require air exchange requirements. And some of my communities have specific floor space requirements per pet. We did not get into those elements. Those will be generally handled by the Humane Society, and in that respect, our biggest concern is just making sure that they're compatible and friendly neighbors with the adjoining properties. We've also established some performance standards for outdoor dog runs and other things, but that will be in the licensing requirement. One of the other changes related to dog kennels is that we had, under licensing, we have a commercial dog kennel definition, we have a residential dog kennel definition, and then those definitions are totally different than what we have as a zoning definition. So we changed the zoning definition to reflect commercial dog kennel per the license. And we also added the exception for pet shops or veterinary clinics or veterinary hospitals. So we adjusted those, so now our definitions between licensing and zoning should be complementary. With that, I will try to field any questions and look forward to your comments.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions at this time? Commissioner Singh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Brixis, I want to go back to the aquaponics and the fish cleaning and processing.
Yes.
Now, we have animal processing. Don't we have animal meat processing?
You do in your I-2 district,
Yes, we have that. Now, I see similar situation with processing, scaling, and processing of the fish, if someone is to get involved in that. So I would think that in industrial areas, districts, we have to take into consideration that there will be odor, as long as it's not to the degree that is causing problems for neighboring businesses, staff, and customers. So I would think that we can allow the fish processing, but we would need to, the language for that will have to be specific, or as near as to specific as possible about, you know, the cleanliness and the odor. We would not be able to, if somebody's processing fish, you will have some odor, we know that.
Commissioner Singh, the way we specifically address that is we said we've listed industrial food production provided that the operations are fully contained within the building.
Right.
All processing or cleaning of products may occur provided waste disposal is in enclosed containers and do not create nuisance odors, and that the operator of the facility will provide evidence that the facility is in compliance with all county, state, and federal regulations.
That's
how we try to
that
address
satisfies me. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Bricks, is looking at that language for the aquaponics or the fish, is there any difference between that and, say, somebody wanted to open a meat processing plant? Would they have the same standards, different standards?
Generally, the meat packing will still have to meet federal guidelines as far as health and sanitation, and they will have to be licensed through the state and will be inspected. I have direct recollection. My father used to have a grocery store, and the minute he started cutting meat, he went through the annual inspection of the entire back of the grocery store.
Sure.
So yes.
And I'm guessing, like you said, then the fish processing would be very similar, right?
I would assume so, yes. Based on, we contacted the city of St. Paul, who's seeing more and more of the aquaponics and the hydroponics. Actually, they're very, from what our research or what they tell us, these are very complementary businesses in that they use the water from the aquaponics to fertilize and treat the crops. So it's a circular system. That being said, when we actually get the processing of the produce, both whatever comes from the hydroponics or the fish, I think it's a situation where we would like to be flexible enough to allow that business to expand into and sell the end product rather than have it a secondary middleman be brought in.
I agree. I think I agree with Commissioner Singh. I think with the language that's there, that it fits if we're allowing meat packing. I don't see the difference between processing fish.
I agree.
So, any other issues or questions?
Chair, can I just, but the raising of the fish will be conditional use, correct?
Yes,
So
yes.
It's a conditional use, a little farther investigation prior to them coming in, so it's not like it's a permitted use. So I'm more comfortable with the process it would go through with.
And I'd strongly suggest that as part of the submission that we get some type of certification from the various agencies that they've looked at what this is going to entail.
Commissioner Singh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Brixis, can we go back for a moment to the kennels?
Yes.
I think right now, kennels are permitted in what districts? Help me
I
understand.
believe it's a permitted use in the B4 and a conditional use in our B3 and all our industrial districts.
So with the change, we are gonna make these permitted?
No, they're going to remain a conditional use permit in our industrial districts, but what we've done is we've added performance standards within the licensing requirements, so it's not a zoning issue per se. So all uses, whether they're permitted or conditional, will have to meet these performance standards as far as enclosed exercise area, fencing around the exercise area. Multi-tenant building must have an air exchange specific to that portion of the building being used, so they're not exchanging air between tenant bays. So that they had to have a appropriate size cage for each animal and an adequate sick area for any animal. That the finished materials below 48 inches in height shall be impervious, washable. That's for the walls. And then they had to seal the floor in some fashion that would not allow for urine or feces to permeate the floor. It becomes a hard item to re-rent once, if these things are not specifically addressed.
My bias here would to limit kennels to the industrial districts. That's my bias, is to limit. I'm okay with the way it's presented, but because we have had issues with kennels and what happens to neighbors, smell. You have to have exercise areas, the noise, and I think those are more suitable for industrial sites. I don't want to open a store next to a kennel.
No, I can appreciate what you're saying.
So if we are going to have our commercial districts for commercial, our industrial districts can take the kennels. That's just my 2 cents.
Any other thoughts along those lines from other commissioners? Preferences on that? Go ahead.
The attachment B on the kennels, I'm pretty good with that. I agree with Commissioner Singh that there are some issues there, but I thought about it, and I don't know how we come up with better language than what's in there. I struggled with that.
We really never investigated the commercial zoning districts, the business zoning districts as to those uses. So if there's any feeling that kennel should be moved exclusively to our industrial district, that's something that could be processed as a future amendment if you have strong feelings on that.
Mr. Slaney?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I just also wanted to note that it's quite, pets in the United States are quite a business. We're certainly going away from what kennels were 10 or 15 years ago to what kennels and dog daycares are now. And I think they are becoming more commonplace. They're becoming more service and retail in nature. I certainly agree, a neighboring business in a shopping center is going to want to be cautious who's coming in next to them, but I feel it'd be a little too much to say just in the industrial districts. Just a example, some of the pet stores, some of the larger names pet stores also offer dog daycare or overnight kenneling, and they are in our retail district. So we can certainly look into it, but without some more research, I don't want to make any conclusions tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Slaney. Any other?
I have another.
Sure, go ahead.
I fully support the provision for restaurant in facilities for workers. Was it restaurant was one or daycare?
Daycare.
Daycare. I think that's critical. People, bring their kids to daycare, and if they can have a facility at their workplace, that's a very, very good thing for our workers. Same with the restaurant. I also support the standalone restaurant. That will be the exception. That's the only exception there. So I fully support that. I didn't know you had put it as a standalone. When I did my reading and listening to the Economic Development Commission, I thought that I would raise that restaurants be allowed in the industrial.
That was the last change that city staff had on Thursday before the packet went out, so I can't take any of the credit for that one, so,
They do a good job.
yes.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Then I'm sorry.
Chris?
I have a question in the attachment A. I don't mean to get bogged down in, but it's on page 6. It's under section 8, title 10, where we talk about industrial I-1 park conditional uses. Down a little ways on page 6, after motor vehicle terminal and maintenance garage, there's an addition that's underlined. I just want to kind of understand what that was. It's in red. It's municipal buildings and structures, including the storage of firefighting apparatus, provided that no buildings shall be located within 50 feet of any lot line of the abutting lot in an R use district. Storage of maintenance equipment and trucks over 1 1/2 ton. Stockpiling of aggregate open storage material shall not be allowed. So can you help me with, that's, obviously it's new because it's in red and it's
Yes.
underlined. And so that is, can you help me clarify, that's a conditional use or that is no longer a use?
That is a new conditional use permit allowed within the district.
So those would be allowed?
Yes, basically it's a public works facility or a firefighting. We have the fire training facility in our industrial district that we had to make sure that gets put back into our industrial district because it was rolling over otherwise.
Okay, because where the ALF is today, plus we do have aggregate stockpiling next to it, so I'm assuming that's what that is?
Correct.
And that's I-1, because on the other side of Riverwood is Walmart, so that would be a different, is that GIH?
That is actually B4.
B4, okay. Okay. And Chair, at some point I have a couple of questions for Chris based around the EDC conversation, but that's all I think I have for Al.
All right, sure. Why don't you want to ask Chris right now, and then we'll do the public hearing after.
Yeah,
Oh.
I sit down.
Okay. Chris, just a couple quick questions. And
Absolutely.
given some of the conversations that were discussed at the EDC, I have just a couple questions. With everything that's written as it's in front of us this evening, with the most recent change of freestanding restaurants, how many businesses will we have in the I-1 that will be non-conforming after this? I mean, is there, I know there was going to be the two, there was the restaurant next to what used to be Burnsville Bowl, it's I think a Chinese restaurant,
Correct.
I guess, and the Burger King.
Correct. We would not have anything non-conforming right now.
As the way the ordinances are written today.
Correct.
Okay.
And just a little background, we had gone back and forth on how to handle restaurants. The language we have is the same that's mimicked in the B3. So we had discussed rezoning a couple parcels or something like that. It would still get to the same end result. It would
Okay.
be a conditional use permit.
Because the EDC conversation was based around specifically a possible rezoning around 12th Avenue from Cliff to 13.
Correct.
And staff believes that some of the EDC's concerns are taken care of by that?
Correct.
Okay. And there was some concerns about where we were drawing lines with museums and galleries and certain businesses with the EDC. And I certainly, I guess I want to start, I'm in support of the ordinance as it is. I was just trying to address a couple of concerns. So when there was some comments about traffic at museums and galleries and art studios where those were being allowed. And was there any thought in rolling the same, and I think we talked about this early on at the first presentation, where we upped the amount of accessory retail from 850 square feet to 1,000. And I'm aware of some businesses near where I work that are galleries that some have high traffic and some don't. Was there any thought put into having that same sort of so if it's a gallery and there's under 1,000 square feet of display space, it could fall into one, versus if it was over that, then I think in some cases those fell into a conditional use. If someone wanted an accessory retail of 5,000 square feet, that would need to be a CUP, correct? Okay.
Correct.
I understand I was just curious, and I was thinking that through from a standpoint of addressing some of where we weren't going to allow it, but could we allow it if, we limited essentially the space that's open to the public? Because the EDC was concerned about the initial goal here of adding, not detracting from the number of businesses in the I-1. So that was just a thought. And then I think that's all I had, sir.
All right. Any other questions or comments based on that anybody raised comes up with? All right. With that, this is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. Anybody that wishes to speak on these proposed changes, please step forward and voice your questions or comments at this time. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Any other issues or for entertaining a motion?
No, before you,
Sure.
if I may.
Yep, go ahead.
I think this what we're doing here is a very positive move by our city. Prior to this, or as it is now, there's a hodgepodge of services that are in all our zoning districts. In the I1, I2, B4, B3. I think we are streamlining our services in certain districts. We are allowing, there is room for commercial to be commercial, industrial to be industrial. This it's not only good for the city, but it's good for commercial people who want to do business in Burnsville. We welcome them. People, as you know very well, Mr. Chair, that we attract many, many businesses every year. People are coming to Burnsville, which is good for our city, good for the citizens of our city. And I think this move that staff is taking and the council is taking is a very positive one indeed. And I support this wholeheartedly. So
Thank you, Commissioner.
I would like to say to Mr. Brixis and Chris and staff, hats off to you for the job you have done. This takes a lot of work because it's territory we are moving into. I think we'll be the leader in this kind of thing. And I applaud the staff for doing such a good job and making our job as planning as commissioners on this commission easier. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Singh. Any other comments at this time? Commissioner Braddock?
I would like to echo Commissioner Singh's comments. I think the staff's done an excellent job. I think there's a lot of work that went into this. I do believe that this needed to be done, and but I also wanted to comment a couple things on some concerns from the EDC. I would be, as I've stated before, in support of this as is. Kind of outside of our role, though, from a land use standpoint, I still realize we have some serious vacancies in that area. As I was going through this and driving some blocks down there in some parts of the city that I haven't been to before, I do think we still have some stuff that I don't know if it's a work plan for the next year or so, and I don't know if it's necessarily zoning, but I think we need to leave no stone unturned, so to speak, from we had some tenants come to us with the Southside Gym, the sports training, and their need to be able to lease their facilities. I think we've come a long ways with new uses. I agree with Commissioner Singh that we have probably streamlined some of those to make that, when they work down there, better. But what else could we do as a city for, what else is it going to take for those landlords to be able to lease those buildings, to be able to bring people to Burnsville? Is that, can we look at how the CUP works with outdoor storage. I notice there's a fair amount of businesses down there that have done a lot of that, but it's still limited. There's not a lot of fencing. What are the setbacks? The city did and has gotten some pretty decent PR in the last couple of years with how we have refunded, I think it's some building permits, if it's a specific remodel for a home, for a residential. Is there something we could do along those lines to, we have these buildings for lease that are empty that have these uses that we've cleaned them up. And how do can we put together, and in many cases it may be more PR than the money spent, how do we refund some money for a new building permit, or how do we streamline the process? Would be, I guess, my thought process on the next step after we've done this very important work up front, which had to be done. But what's the next step to be able to help those businesses, those landlords fill those buildings and generate employment in the city? I think that's, if it's we're at a 40% vacancy rate today, and in a year and a half we check it, and if it's gotten better, we've done the right thing. If we've gone from 40 to 50% vacancy rate, then obviously we haven't done the right thing, and we need to go back. So thanks for my time.
Thank you, Commissioner Bradrick. Any other questions or comments at this time? I agree with, I think, Commissioner Bradrick. I think hats off to Mr. Brixis, Mr. Slaney, all the other people working on this who we don't know the names of. I'm sure there's lots of people hours that were put into this that came out with a very nice product. I agree with Commissioner Bradrick that this was an important first step, and I guess I would look at, I don't know if it's a work plan or something else, to make streamline the process, I think, is the key. I think that's really what would be of a beneficial nature to this. With that, I would support this as well. So, with that, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, it's my honor and pleasure to move that Planning Commission recommend to the City of Burnsville approval of an ordinance amending Title 10, Chapters 4, 19, 22, 23, 24, and 25 of the Burnsville City Code regarding permitted and conditional uses.
Thank you. Motion made by Commissioner Singh. Second? Second by Commissioner Bradrick. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It passes 5-0. And this would go to the City Council on June 3rd at their regular meeting, correct?
Correct,
All right.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair,
Sure.
I ask that the Planning Commission also provide a recommendation on amendment to Title 6, which is our police regulations. This is not a zoning item. As such, a public hearing was not required, but it sets the performance standards for commercial kennels. If you agree with the terms that are outlined in Attachment B, I would look for a recommendation to council.
All right. Any comments on that, or I'll entertain a motion?
I would move that the Planning Commission recommend approval to the City Council the amendments presented to us in Attachment B per our background.
I beg to second that, Mr. Chair.
All right. Motion made by Commissioner Bradrick, second by Commissioner Singh. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes 5-0, and also will go to the council on June 3rd. Correct? Thank you.
Mr.
Anything
Chair.
else we need to address on that? Okay, great. The next item would be any updates, commissioners? Any updates?
None for me, Chair.
Staff?
First thing, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, just a note that a lot of the heavy lifting on that last item came from Alan, his firm, and they did a great job, and they were able to look at, compare a lot of these things to their other communities that on its own, Burnsville couldn't do that or couldn't get some of that knowledge and that background experience. So I think that really helped as we're opening things up and trying to streamline more for the I-1 district. The other item I have, Commissioners, is we do have a full agenda for June 9th, and we'll keep things moving as best we can.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Slania. That I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Moved by Commissioner Singh, second. Second by Commissioner Bradrick. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.